Thank you. And I'd like to say, I hope that this really follows on well with what Ashley said. I thought it was phenomenal. I hope to inspire and enlighten you about how, when you get in the right energetic zone, blessings can flow into your life and your progression to your dream life can happen quite quickly. As was just said, I'm a 72-year-old retired widower. So now, how can what I have to share be meaningful to you? The fact is, for 68 years, I lived my life under one paradigm. Then I went through some trauma. I made some different choices. And now I'm living at a different energetic level. And the difference in my life before and after that transformation has been quite dramatic. But I want to start with a practice that I use every day that I think is critically important if you're trying to progress in your life. At different phases of our life, we have different priorities and different desires. And when we make choices about what's important to us now, I believe it's critically important to reframe your subconscious mind. I do that through a mantra that I say several times a day. And what you'll find is when your subconscious mind is in alignment with your conscious desires, then you perceive opportunities and challenges differently. And you begin to make consistent choices so you'll progress much faster toward where you want to be. So, what's my mantra now? I'm happy, I'm healthier, I'm grateful. It's always a choice. My life is blessed because my state of being resonates with love and compassion for all living things. I see opportunities, make choices, and take actions aligned with my dream life vision and values. I'm optimistic, trusting that desires are always manifesting. But frequently they come in unanticipated ways. And this is a blessing because it pushes us to consider different alternative ways to achieve our desires. And when we're in alignment with the vibration of the universe, blessings can truly flow into your life. I humbly receive with gratitude and choose to circulate blessings through others so they compound. I am living my dream life now, pursuing remarkable experiences and truly awesome people to enjoy them with. I'm loving being Jade 2.0 because of the positive impact I'm having on others. So I intend to tell some stories from the before period, the transformation, and what's happened afterwards. First, I need to define that paradigm that I was living in for the first 68 years. I was truly very competitive. I not only wanted to succeed by myself, but I was driven to outdo others, to push for more, for constantly accelerating. And that had consequences in my life. Let's go back to the very beginning. I was born a fat baby. I was a fat child, and I made a conscious choice to live my life as a hedonist. I was interested in my mental capacities, not my physical abilities. Despite my competitiveness, I never really got into sports. You see, when I was a child on the playground, they always divide up the kids and people are chosen, and the fat boy is always the very last person to get chosen. That didn't match my identity, and so I chose other ways to compete. My mother is a music teacher. I picked up the trumpet, and during junior high and high school, I focused a lot on music. I was in the marching bands and the jazz ensembles. In the orchestra, I was the first chair trumpeter. I got to stand up at the assemblies and play the little solos, and that made me quite proud. When it came time to select an undergraduate school, I chose a liberal arts college. At that point in my life, I was very interested and curious about the human experience. It seems strange to me that so few people ever truly found their purpose and found fulfillment in life, while the vast majority simply live up to other people's expectations and leave remarkably unfulfilling lives. The key distinction in my undergraduate degree, I chose to spend my junior year abroad. I lived in Greece and I traveled all around the Mediterranean. I was primarily focusing on studying philosophy at that point. I believe that immersive, expansive experience early in my life helped me see the world differently than most people do. After undergraduate school, I made two decisions that set a foundation for the remainder of my life. The first, I proposed to my high school sweetheart, a girl I'd met in the seventh grade, taken her to the junior and senior prom. Then we'd gone to different colleges. We started dating other people. But after undergraduate school, I think we knew that we just enjoyed living life together. That marriage lasted almost 48 years before her untimely death. I think most people will admit that was successful. The second choice I made was to purchase my family's blueberry farm that I had grown up. Did I want to be a farmer? No. I knew that my wife and I would be going to graduate school, and I didn't want to start our professional career with a mountain of debt. So we would earn the money first. We ran the farm for 3 years, then sold it, went off to graduate school. I got an MBA in marketing, and I joined the consumer packaged goods industry. Many of the products from General Mills and Sara Lee and ConAgra that you may have experienced, as well as a few other companies, I was involved in for a 35-year career. The key distinction when I was in the corporate world, every company I worked at, I turned the lights on in the morning. Now, why would a person show up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning when the workday didn't start till 8:30 or 9 o'clock? I knew that I wouldn't always be the smartest person in the room, but I knew that I could outwork anyone. You see, when I would show up early morning hours when no one else was there, I could get all of my daily work done before anyone else showed up. That made me available for lots of cross-functional meetings to help the companies work better. When I had subordinates, I could spend more time with my subordinates and help them progress faster. Management noticed that. They also noticed that I was always available and volunteering for the special projects that they always have, that most people are too busy trying to get their own work done to put any true effort in. As a result, for over a third of the 35 years I was in the corporate world, I was at the vice president of marketing level. That fit with my self-identity. I wanted to be a player. I wanted to be involved with all the important decisions in helping companies grow. My corporate career ended in 2008 with the Great Recession. I was working for a privately held company at the time, a large organization. But what do privately held companies do when a recession is coming? They cut back on their marketing. So I found myself out of work when no one was hiring marketers. I trusted that the universe always provides. And one of the downsides that I'd noticed of the environment was that so many people were losing their homes to foreclosure because they were financially overextended. This created significant opportunities in the real estate world. So I decided to jump into that world. I started doing some fix and flip projects. And I started building a portfolio of rental properties for passive income. But my competitive streak came through again. I wanted more. I realized that I could use my marketing skills to raise private capital and only be involved in the private lending part of real estate deals. You see, when you do a fix and flip, you're typically only doing one project at a time. But when I could only focus on the funding part of it, it created leverage. In fact, over a 10-year period, I raised millions of dollars and originated over 150 short-term private loans. That part of my career ended with COVID. See, fix and flips are all about the churn, quick turning. And when the world stops for 6 months to a year and the supply chains get all messed up, so even when you have people trying to do work, they couldn't get the materials they needed, a lot of very good deals turned into bad deals. That was the time that I decided I'd just retire, get out of the rat race, get out of the constant grind pushing for more. You need something to do during retirement. So I went back to studying philosophy. I got involved in spirituality, and that's where I met James McNeil. He had an interesting proposition. He intended to do spiritual retreats at exotic resorts all over the world. And I thought that would be a wonderful way to spend my retirement, to get paid, to go to beautiful places and be in with enlightened people. So I jumped into his program. I think Diane and Olga, who I met in that program, could attest. Even when I showed up in a world of spirituality, my competitiveness came through. I wanted to be one of the first to get certified to be a leader in his program. One of the requirements, as Diane mentioned, of that program was we would constantly going to retreats and other training down in Cancun, Mexico. Following one of those trips, I came home after 2 weeks in Mexico. I said hello and goodbye to my wife because she was spending her retirement years pursuing her passions. She was very involved with women's service organizations, Masonic groups like the Eastern Star, Daughters of the Nile, the Ladies of the Oriental Shrine. Perhaps some of you know of those organizations. She was going on a trip to help raise money for the Shriners Children's Hospital for more equipment for the children. 2 days later, I get a phone call. My wife had suffered a massive heart attack and stroke. She lasted a day and a half and then never be coming home. And this turned my world upside down. As I mentioned, I chose to live my life as a hedonist and not to focus on my physicality. In fact, during COVID, when there was nothing to do but sit at home and read books and eat, I ballooned to over 400 pounds. The other aspect of my family life that I hadn't mentioned is that despite trying, my wife and I never had children. Early in our career, we wanted to establish ourselves first. And then when the time was getting near, we tried, but it just never happened. So when my wife was gone, all of a sudden I was all alone. I hadn't expected to live a long life because of the choices that I had made in my life. That was one of the reasons I built passive income streams with rental property, because I wanted to care for my wife. But sometimes life just throws you curveballs. And I was here and she no longer was. As so often happens when you're in grief and experiencing trauma, you begin to reassess your life and the choices that you have made. One of the first things I realized is while from the outside looking in, I had been quite successful. When you define success as more, as trying to outdo other people, there's always more stress. You need more, you need more. And I'd never taken time to enjoy all that I had achieved. That was a point that I decided I needed to make some changes if, in fact, I was going to persist. I needed to address my health. I started going to the Y every day to swim in the pool. When they'd open up at 5 a.m., I'd be there and swim for an hour. It's just the way I roll. I started losing some weight. The second thing I did is I decided to change my energetic level. I believe there are two basic platforms that people fall into. There are the givers and the takers. The givers use their energy to help other people and they get their benefit as they see other people succeed. I had been a taker all of my life. I'd always looking to manipulate the situations, to strive to overcome, to do better than others. However, I needed to do it to get there. And that wasn't serving me with the way that I really wanted to live my life. So I've made it my mission to share what I know, what I believe, and what I have with others to help them in their journey moving forward. And it's made all the difference in the world. The first chance I got to demonstrate through action whether or not that would truly occur, I got a phone call from the best friend that I had in the world of real estate. We'd done many deals together and partnered on some deals. He'd gone through a divorce, I think perhaps because of COVID, but he was financially devastated during COVID and he knew that I was now alone and he asked, could he move into my home for a brief time? And I said, I'd love the company, quite frankly. I'm trying to get over this grieving process. And it turned out to be a wonderful decision. Greg is a wonderful cook and he knew about my health journey. He put me on a keto diet. In fact, in the last 3.5 years that I've been with Greg in my home, I've lost over 160 pounds. Greg and I both enjoyed racing, and we started watching a lot of races and putting racing memorabilia around the house. We got a pool table. We started playing pool every night after dinner and hosting parties with people coming over to our home to play pool. I really thought my life is blessed at that point. This was also a time I learned more about Greg. I'd only known him from the world of real estate, but we also began watching baseball games, college games, and professional games. And Greg told me his story in baseball. He'd grown up playing baseball. He went to college and played baseball. He wasn't good enough to be into the pros, but he found his own niche. He's very compassionate, very observant, is a great communicator. It turns out he was a great baseball coach at the college level. And then as his life progressed, and he still stayed involved in baseball with youth sports and travel team baseball and all of that. I could tell that was an area of passion for him. At this point, my life got even better. Greg started dating a woman. Her name is Miranda. And she would occasionally come over to the house at first. And eventually, as their relationship advanced, she was there more and more. And eventually, it moved in. As I got to know Miranda, I really discovered how blessed my life had been. You see, at every twist and turn, I'd found a way to progress, to find something new that I could succeed at. Some people don't live a life like that. Miranda had been born into a family that was deep into drugs, and there was lots of abuse, even the worst kind of abuse that could happen between a father and a daughter. So she got involved in the foster care system and was shuffled around from house to house to house. She never found a loving family like I grew up in. She got married early, had two children, but that relationship didn't last either. Again, there was abuse. As I learned more about her story, I realized one of the hesitancies for her wanting to get around me was that virtually every male that she'd run into her life had abused her, used her, and tossed her off. How terrible that is. No one chooses to live a life of victimhood, but some people have that in their history. I wanted to figure out how I could help Miranda move beyond focusing on the past to the optimistic future. One day, Miranda mentioned that there was a historic softball field up in the Pocono Mountains, an area that she had grown up in, that was for sale. Greg and I went off to look at that facility. When we got there, it had basically been abandoned and needed a lot of renovation, but that didn't deter us. We'd spent decades doing real estate development stuff. We knew we could handle that. But Greg's demeanor entirely changed when we walked onto that field. He started to talk about all of the help that he could have in building children, not only on the field, but off the field with such a facility, and how our location there would be great for the Northeastern area in travel team baseball. I had the financial capabilities. Greg had the skills and passion. So Fields of Fun was born. Getting back to Miranda for a second, I wanted to figure out how I could help her like I had helped Greg through the purchase of this business. I had previously signed up to go to the retreat that Olga, or Diane and Olga were hosting that you just saw a picture of. I asked Miranda if she'd like to attend, and at first she was a little hesitant, to travel to a foreign country with a man twice your age and go see a bunch of people that she didn't know one of them. But fortunately, she said yes. And I truly believe that was one of the most magnificent experiences in her life. 8 days in a virtual paradise on the side of a mountain in Costa Rica. All the flowers and the animals, and they had a vegan diet, with beautiful food, tasty food. But the best part of it was the people that were there. There were 15 or 16 other women near her age who were all aspirational, striving to use their skills and passions to bless the world. And I think this was the first time Miranda had ever been exposed to people like that. Miranda and I really bonded when we were in Costa Rica. One morning while we were there, I was sitting outside watching the sunrise and the hummingbirds pollinate the trees. And I thought about a conversation that Miranda and I had had before we left to come to Costa Rica. One day she said to me, Jay, you're so kind and loving and giving. You're just like the father I wish I always had. But of course, I ended up with the opposite. And of course, my response was, Miranda, you're just like the beautiful daughter my wife and I always craved. Now I'm a little blessed because peripherally, I can enjoy your family, your children, your relationship with Greg. When we got home, I pondered and I shocked Miranda with a question. I asked, would she like to consider being adopted? And she said yes. Now, why would a 72-year-old man want to adopt a woman half his age with two children who was divorced, who was in a relationship with your best friend, and building a business together with him? Kind of sounds like Peyton Place, right? It came straight from the heart. I have unconditional love for Miranda. I know that building a business can be quite stressful, and I wanted her to know that for the first time in her life, no matter what would happen eventually with the ball field, no matter what would happen with her relationship with Greg, she would always have a loving home that she could come to with her children and a degree of financial stability that she had never experienced in her life. I'm so pleased to say that in early 26, that came to be. And in fact, last Sunday, I was so happy. For the first time in my life, I experienced Father's Day on the receiving side. Both of our lives are truly blessed because of this. Now, I've talked about energetic levels, and I want to tell a story that relates to the ball fields and energy levels. First, I have to tell you a little background. This ball field was built 45 years ago, and in the late 90s and early 2000s, it achieved prominence. In fact, the United States Olympic softball team used this as their home base in 96 and 2000, and they went on to achieve gold medals those years. And lots of people began coming to this facility because of the Olympic team, and the community benefited. And then because of the Olympic notoriety, many more events were happening there, and it was great for the community. Over the years, though, as it transitioned hands and new people didn't know what they were doing, and it deteriorated, as we said, it eventually was just gone, and the community suffered greatly. When the community began to hear that a coach, college baseball coach of some renown, had purchased the facility with the intention of rejuvenating it to its former glory, people started coming out of the woodwork, wanting to learn more and wanting to know how they could help. It was a synchronicity that we met a very key influencer in the area who introduced us to so many other people. One of the things about the facility, Greg and I knew that we could renovate the fields and the building that was there, but what was missing was an indoor facility so you can train year round, not just host games in the summer. And as well, you can have activities during an inclement weather rather than just sending everybody home. One of the people that an influencer introduced us to is a very significant family foundation. And when they got to meet Greg and understand his passion for helping the children, they mentioned that about 10 miles away from our fields, they had an indoor facility that had been underutilized because they didn't have the right people to manage it. And they would offer to make us partners in that facility to run everything related to the ball sports. A true blessing, unanticipated. Rather than us having to work and spend $2 or $3 million to build a facility on our own land, we now had access to a facility right down the road. But that was just the beginning, because they're in the deep end of planning for a groundbreaking coming up later in 26 for a brand new, very expansive facility, $22 million facility that we're going to be partners in. That they've asked Greg to help design everything related to the inside of that facility that relates to ball sports, because he's been to so many, he knows exactly what's needed. Once again, unanticipated blessings. I'd like to tell one more story about energy and about synchronicities that happen. When we purchased the facility last summer, there was a residence at the facility, and Greg and Miranda moved up to the facility, and I was expected. I was 100 miles away. I came up frequently, but just for the day. And I missed being our extended family all together. When it got to be the winter months, I fully expected they'd be back in Harleysville. But there was so much going on with renovations and all these new relationships and plans for the future and important things happening. It was clear they were never coming home. And as a family unit, we talked and we said, hey, the logical thing is for me to move up to the Pocono Mountain area. Miranda knew the area well. I asked her to help me find a lovely home in the area. And the first words out of her mouth was, we need to move to Mountaintop. It's the real gem in this area nearby our fields. So she worked with a realtor. I had said, this is about what my house should sell for in Harleysville. Let's get something that's approximately the same value. We thought it'd be simple trade. The very first day that I came up to go out with Miranda and Greg and look at houses with the realtor, Miranda had one house picked out that was at the top of their list and many others that we thought we would go through. When I walked into that first home, I knew this was absolutely perfect for us. Located at a golf course, 2 acres, huge trees, beautifully landscaped, big stone house, a pool out the back with a gazebo that with a fountain that flows into the pool. We even got the prior owners to leave this huge trampoline out back that they'd purchased for their grandchildren. Now Miranda's children are over swimming in the pool, playing on the trampoline. We're sitting in the gazebo having family meals together. This is my dream life. What I hadn't realized before the transition of location was that while my home in Harleysville will sell for $225 a square foot, this beautiful home in Mountaintop I purchased for $138 a square foot. A huge upgrade in lifestyle. I'm so pleased this is where I'll spend my final years, and for decades, Greg and Miranda can enjoy this property. So I'd like to end in maybe two comments. 4 years ago, I was devastated. The love of my life had passed. Turns out that James's program for the retreats was falling apart. I was in bad health. I didn't have a reason to live more. And then I made some choices. I changed my energetic level. And now, 3.5 years later, I'm living in a dream life house with people that I love, working on a business that will be a legacy business with the help of others that will serve tens of thousands and ultimately hundreds of thousands of people. Dreams do come true when you're at the right energetic level. And one way you get at that energetic level is to reprogram your subconscious mind to what you truly desire. So once again, now that you've heard my story, perhaps my mantra will have a little more meaning for you now. I'm happy, I'm healthier, I'm grateful. It's always a choice. My life is blessed because my state of being resonates with love and compassion for all living things. I see opportunities, I make choices and take actions aligned with my dream life, vision, and values. I'm optimistic, trusting that desires are always manifesting. Often they come in unanticipated ways. And this is a blessing because it pushes me to consider alternative ways that I can achieve my desires. And when I'm in the right vibrational state, synchronicities occur and blessings begin to flow into my life. I am living my dream life now, pursuing remarkable experiences and truly awesome people to enjoy them with. I'm loving being J 2.0 because of the positive impact I'm having on others. Thank you.